This councillor is a Freemason, but he doesn't always tell the public when he votes. Neither does this councillor. Do we need a register of Freemasons to force them to be more open?
If there's nothing to hide, why give the impression that you've got something to hide?
Or are Freemasons being unfairly singled out?
Freemasonry is a system of honesty, trying to operate to standards, and if you believe in that, then you don't break the law, not in practice or in your spirit.
The medieval stonemasons who built our churches and cathedrals also provided the inspiration for Freemasonry.
If you look up here at these beautiful arches and see the exquisite workmanship that has gone into that, you will realise that not only were they very skilled, but they would need to be able to hold on to those skills. So what they would do is to impart their skills only to those that they thought were trustworthy. Many of them couldn't read, many of them couldn't write. So they did this by use of signs and special tokens. And it's those particular keywords and those particular signs that go back many, many hundreds of years that in the Masonic lodges of today we consider to be very special, and they form, yes, a secret part of our ceremonies. That is the only secretive part of our ceremonies.
The travelling stonemasons formed lodges wherever they worked, and they used their secret signals to protect and promote their fellow members.
My ancestors in the craft went to the buildings and worked on the building until they were completed, you see. And of course there were constant comings and goings, and so they developed this system of signals, secret handshakes or things like that, so that they could tell that the new man was a definitely qualified man. And I think that from that we gradually developed the idea of Freemasonry.
Many medieval guilds disappeared during the Industrial Revolution, but the Masons' rituals and secret signals appealed to the new professional classes. The lodges were transformed from working men's to gentlemen's clubs. This transformation was so successful that Freemasonry now has 300,000 members. The all-male tradition still survives. The links between stonemasonry and Freemasonry can be seen in quarrying areas. On Portland, there are 6 Masonic lodges and 500 members. Nationally, about 1 in 70 men are Freemasons. On Portland, it's 1 in 8.
I was apprenticed in October 1929, and I served a 5-year apprenticeship. And then I did progress from stonemason to foreman and assistant manager and eventually works manager.
And did you become a Freemason?
Not until I became an assistant manager, because I was so afraid that someone might say, you got that job for being a Freemason, you see. And they would, so I didn't attempt to join until I had a position of some authority that I'd earned. When I was apprentice, we were trained to lift the mallet and brush the lobe of your ear. I don't do that now. The mallet, of course, is of heavy wood and falls very heavily upon the head of this tool. Now, in Freemasonry, the chisel points out the advantages of education, by which means alone we are rendered fit and proper persons of an organized society. And the mallet should keep down all vain and unbecoming thoughts.
There are a number of symbolic tools that are used as part of our ceremonies. The square teaches morality. It teaches us to harmonise our conduct in this life so as to render us acceptable to our God. The level demonstrates equality, demonstrates that we are all sprung from the same stock. Because the time will come, and the wisest of us know not when all distinctions, save goodness and virtue, would cease, and death, the grand leveller of all human greatness, would reduce us all to the same state. The plumb rule represents uprightness. It teaches us never to turn to the left or the right from the paths of virtue.
Freemasonry is full of strange language and rituals, but some of the ceremony has increased public suspicion.
My hand, given to a master mason, shall be a sure pledge of brotherhood. My feet shall travel through dangers and difficulties to unite with his in forming a column of mutual defence and support.
These vows suggest that, like the old stonemasons, Freemasons still believe in mutual support. So do they also protect and promote their own members?
Some people believe that Freemasons enter Freemasonry to sort of get on in their careers. Is that not the case?
I think probably that it's true to say that one or two may well do that. But in reality, once they're joined, they soon learn the principles of Freemasonry. There's absolutely no hiding place for the wrongdoer in Freemasonry.
The board would not have authorised me to reveal names without the men's permission.
Public suspicion about Freemasonry led to a parliamentary inquiry. MPs wanted to know the names of any Masons involved in the corrupt West Midlands crime squad.
You're telling us to mind our own business, aren't you?
No, what I'm saying is that I and Freemasons generally resent what seems to be a fishing expedition when we are delighted to help the specific inquiry.
No, I'm sorry, is that yes or no?
Well,
do the lodges know the occupations of their members, yes or no, please?
Do they have a record? No. Do they know them? Possibly yes. It's not as simple as that.
No, excuse me, this is exactly what I want to get at. They were very, very reluctant to have anything to do with us, and they seemed to think that they could pick and choose whether or not to answer the questions. Well, I mean, in a sense, they could. But as we had to point out at one rather tough session, there could be consequences for them declining to answer the questions which we had asked them.
You know, if someone would give me a specific allegation against the names...
The answer is no, isn't it? That you're not willing to allow the committee to assess this information?
The answer is yes, with a caveat.
I'm saying that your records, either at provincial or national level, are sufficiently adequate to enable you to answer the questions we put to you, or most of them, if you choose to.
With a caveat.
It used to be your position that you would cooperate with Parliament. Has that now changed?
No, I'm cooperating as far as I can.
Do you understand that if we now issue a formal order for the information, a refusal to cooperate may amount to contempt of Parliament?
I've answered that one, yes.
Yes, you do understand that. We are the ones who will decide what the questions are, and the decision for you is whether you're going to answer the questions we put to you to the best of your ability. Now, there's two possibilities of that. One is yes and one is no. But we're reaching make your mind up time.
There are ways and ways of answering questions, and they, I believe you me, they answer them with a minimal content.
I think I should probably have to go back to the board and ask them, because what I've come here is with a very clear idea that if I have specific allegations and the leave of the men, then the names can be given. Now, I've got the leave of the men on condition that the specific allegations are made, and that is yes. It's a yes, but it's yes. I'm willing to help. I'm not saying no.
Well, but you're not willing to provide the names on the basis that we are asking.
Not straight out. No, I'm not.
So the answer is no, isn't it?
It must be considered.
Well, I hope you can accept it as being no, but not in a contemptuous way.
Well, that will be for Parliament to decide. Thank you very much.
The names of the Masons in the crime squad were eventually released, and the committee concluded that Freemasonry was not the primary cause of the problems. But the government still wants judges, magistrates and policemen to declare their membership. Voluntary registration started 2 years ago. So far, only a third of policemen have responded.
I think it was probably right for the government to take a fairly soft approach at the start of it. The big question now is, having got a disappointing response right the way round, is when and whether it will move to oblige people to make this declaration if they're employed anywhere in the criminal justice system.
It's all right saying to somebody, your name will go on a register, but it doesn't end there. What happens to the register and how is it used? That is an area of great uncertainty to Freemasons, because within that, one feels that you are going to be discriminated against, even not directly, but certainly indirectly.
The Home Affairs Committee is pressing for a compulsory register and would like to see it extended to local government. The main area of concern is the planning process.
I had this case of an officer in the council stopping me and saying he had been approached by Councillor X, who said, to talk to him, and in the course of the conversation said, well, if you want to, in effect, progress your career, you should come over there, boys, which was to where the Masonic Lodge was.
Nobody knows how many planners have joined a Masonic Lodge because membership is private. This secrecy can lead to surprises. Councillor Jim Hardman was chairman of West Dorset's planning committee until he died last year.
I went along to pay respects to a man that I thought a lot of. And I sat in the pew in this village church, and I sat right behind the coffin, and then it hit me really smack in front of me was the symbols of Freemasonry, the dividers and the compass. And that was the first intimation I had as a group leader on West Dorset that Jim was a Freemason.
The rules of local government do not force Masonic councillors to declare their membership, but they do have to declare an interest if a Mason from their lodge submits a planning application.
The councillor should declare the interest. He doesn't have to say what it is, but he needs to declare it. And he then needs to absent himself from any decision-making process involving it. He needs to keep away from it. He needs not to go to the meeting where it's being discussed. He shouldn't lobby about it behind the scenes or speak to an officer or other members about it. He should just leave it all alone and keep away from it.
Southern Eye looked at whether councillors in Dorset are following these rules. We identified 16 councillors with Masonic connections, and 13 of them are involved in planning. One of the longest serving is back on the Masonic Isle of Portland.
Are you aware that sort of under the local government code of conduct you're supposed to declare an interest if somebody in your lodge submits a planning application?
I wasn't aware of that, no, but as far as I know, I'd never been involved with any member of any lodge.
We found an example where a fellow lodge member had submitted an application. There's no suggestion that Mr. Ames tried to influence the committee, but he did not declare an interest. Mr. Ames has temporarily resigned from the Freemasons, and he's not sure whether he was still a member at the time of the committee meeting.
I think I probably wasn't. But as I say, I take applications in the planning on the evidence I've got, and if I'm not happy with it, I go to look at it myself and form my own opinion.
There is also one Masonic councillor on the Northern Area Planning Committee in West Dorset. Terry Farmer joined Sherborne Lodge in the same year as Owen Curtis. Mr. Curtis has since submitted a planning application to Mr. Farmer's committee, and so have 2 other members of Sherborne Lodge. There's no suggestion Mr. Farmer improperly influenced the decisions, but he never declared his interest.
There have been these 3 cases where Freemasons in your lodge have submitted planning applications. Why have you not declared an interest?
Well, none of them have been my personal friends. I'm a member of the Conservative Party here. There are about 500 members in Sherborne. Some of them I know very, very closely and are what I would call my personal friends. If they came up, I would then declare an interest in the same way if a Freemason that was a personal friend of mine, I would do so. All the lodge members don't go to the lodge. I mean, some people like myself are not that frequent in attendance due to the fact that they've taken on other duties in public life. In theory, the Ombudsman is probably quite right. I don't think in practice you could actually really keep this to the rules.
The Ombudsman cannot comment on individual cases, but he says it's vital that councillors do keep to the rules.
This is, after all, a secret society. It works on secret signs, secret codes of language. Meetings are held behind closed doors, and many people are suspicious that Masons are there to further the ends of other Masons. Well, that's a suspicion that really can't be allowed to visit local government.
Do you think the secrecy surrounding the movement breeds paranoia?
Obviously does. I have to admit that, because that's the situation that we find ourselves in today, which I think is very unfortunate. All we really ask is that the general public look at us the way that we are, instead of accepting innuendos and things that unsubstantiated allegations.
Freemasons say their secrets are harmless.
Worshipful Master, an alarm.
And that revealing them would spoil the experience for new members.
Whom have you there?
Mr. John Smith, a poor candidate in a state of darkness, who has been well and worthily recommended, regularly proposed and approved an open lodge, and who now comes, of his own free will and accord, properly prepared, humbly soliciting to be admitted into the mysteries and privileges of Freemasonry.
Although we're not a secret society, we do consider the internal workings of our lodges private, but that's not because anything that goes on in the lodges or anything that we would be anyway ashamed of.
Are you therefore willing to take a solemn oath, founded on the principles I have stated, to keep inviolate the secrets and mysteries of the order?
I am.
We teach the member, stage by stage, to have a greater self-awareness, knowledge of oneself, and the various characteristics that we feel are most important for all citizens.
Then you will kneel on your left knee.
Particularly charity, benevolence, fidelity, and generally speaking, to be a good and upright citizen.
Give me your right hand.
And that is better communicated, we feel, in the old ways of teaching, and that is two-part plays where the individual member participates in the whole of the role play from beginning to end. That is the way the old stonemasons used to do it in the very old days, and we just propagated that down through the generations to today.
The ceremonies may be hidden from view, but Freemasonry is slowly moving towards a more open policy.
Not the easiest thing to clean. Now all of these come off.
This museum in Poole can now be enjoyed by the general public. The history of Freemasonry in Dorset goes back 264 years, and there are artefacts from many of the province's 48 lodges on display. The old Masonic aprons on the wall tell their own stories.
You'll see they contain three figures: faith, hope and charity. And these are symbols that we concern ourselves with in our ceremonies and in our general moral standards. We think that maybe some of the ladies took a terrific interest and made a lot of adornments on them that only the men appreciated. Let's take a lot of maintaining.
I wonder if you get the same quality of workmanship today. It'd be very nice on the dining room table.
We've always been the subject of humour to the outside world, and it is very interesting. Postcards, cartoons and so forth. There's quite a number of them here that generally take the mick out of us in a quiet way, but all in good nature. No violence, no bad feeling, just good fun.
Freemasons are also keen to promote their charity work.
Here we are, all done and dusted again.
Nationally, they raise £15 million a year for good causes. One of Dorset's biggest charity events was a Pirates' Day Out for disabled children on Round Island.
That was a wonderful day. It's one that will always live with us. It started just from an embryo idea from some of our members, that with some of their work in the community dealing with disadvantaged children,
Nice for each of you.
that we ought to be doing something special for them.
£20 voucher.
I always remember the looks on their faces. They had a wonderful time.
I'd like to introduce our host and hostess here today, Harry Palmer and his delightful wife, Ina. Now, they're the ones who have hosted the event today on this delightful island. Without their kindness, this day wouldn't be possible.
The owner who allowed the children to use the island that day was a Freemason called Harry Palmer.
For all of your help and all of your kindness, and thank you for helping to make this day such a wonderful success.
Mr. Palmer is a developer who has built hundreds of homes in Dorset. Some of his company's planning applications go through East Dorset District Council, where they're considered by Councillor Derek Burt. Mr. Burt's been on the planning committee since 1966, and for the past 20 years he's been in the same Masonic lodge as Harry Palmer. Mr. Burt is one of only 3 Masons on the committee, and there's no suggestion he improperly influenced decisions, but Southern Eye has discovered that he does not always declare his Masonic interest. The amended plans for this Harry Palmer development in Corfmullen were opposed by the pensioner next door.
You wait until they get the tiles on. It isn't going to look quite so good once the tiles on.
She told Mr. Burt's committee that the executive homes would overlook her small bungalow.
I thought they listened. I thought they were sympathetic. But when it's all over, you suddenly realise that you didn't get what you wanted. The builders got what they wanted. It doesn't look like it did.
It's not a lane any longer.
Maybe to put all the blinds around the wrong way.
At the meeting she attended, Derek Burt never mentioned his relationship with Harry Palmer.
Oh no, and it isn't something you even think about.
Mr. Burt says he only declares an interest if the planning application is contentious, and he points out that he did so on one Harry Palmer development. But over the past decade, Mr. Burt has considered 13 Harry Palmer applications. And at 12 of these meetings, he did not declare an interest.
Trust and confidence in the system is absolutely fundamental, and members of the public must be assured that councillors are always considering whether they have a financial or non-financial interest in something coming before them, and if they do, they must keep out of the decision-making process.
The decision-making process in West Dorset involves more Freemasons. Brian Rowe is one of 2 Masons on the Western Area Planning Committee. He joined the Bridport Lodge in the same year as a developer, Eddie Fry. When we secretly recorded this meeting, Mr. Rowe had nothing to declare. He then voted in favour of an application by Mr. Fry's company, CG Fry & Sons.
Those against refusal, that's the last couple. That's the Frost's recommendation of approval with landscaping. Those in favour?
Mr. Fry says he resigned from the lodge around 3 years ago. Because of that, Mr. Rowe felt he was entitled to vote. But the Ombudsman has indicated that even in marginal cases like this, councillors may still have to abstain. Fry & Sons are building in many of the nearby villages. Some of these sites had outline permission when the company bought them. But Fry's still submit numerous planning applications. Mr. Rowe has considered 27 of these since joining the planning committee 3 years ago. There's no suggestion he improperly influenced any decisions, but he has never declared an interest. Councillors who don't declare interests may also be breaking the rules of Freemasonry, as every Freemason promises to abide by a strict moral code.
They take an obligation, which is a promise, to uphold the principles and tenets of Freemasonry, to not bring the organisation into disrepute, to not use their membership in any shape or form for a personal or business advantage or that of any of the other members. They actually take a promise to that effect.
About 30 members a year are expelled for failing to live up to these standards. Freemasons say this shows how seriously they take self-regulation.
So if anybody was abusing Freemasonry or not declaring their interest, you'd want to know about it?
We would want to know about it, most definitely.
And you would deal?
We would deal with it. We have our own discipline code, and we're very jealous of our own reputation and our good honour.
Like the old stonemasons, Freemasons want to be left to regulate their own affairs. If the government disagrees and imposes a compulsory register of members, it will face fierce opposition from one of our oldest and most resilient institutions.
I think it's down to us in Freemasonry to educate people, but at the same time to challenge them and say, well, why single out Freemasonry? Where is the evidence to do that?
I've been a Freemason now for 40 years, and I know nothing wrong about that at all. Nobody's ever asked me to do something wrong for them, or I've never had any benefit other than social from being a Freemason.
Within a Masonic lodge, there are many good people, many outstanding people, who do a lot of good works, and you cannot fault them at all for their role in society. But I do think that what it does, it provides a structure in which odd people who want to advance themselves can get together.
Let me congratulate you on being admitted a member of our ancient and honourable institution.
When I first joined Freemasonry way back in the 50s, I was sworn to secrecy, even to the extent that I wouldn't discuss it with my wife.
Ancient, no doubt it is, as having subsisted from time immemorial. And honourable it must be acknowledged to be.
We looked inwards, and I think we were very much like ostriches. And if anybody said anything about us, we just turned our head and say, it'll go away in a week's time, don't worry about it.
No institution can boast a more solid foundation than that on which Freemasonry rests. The practice of every moral and social virtue.
So I think in a sense we brought it on ourselves. But like everything else, we are beginning to learn, we are beginning to recognise the changes in society, and we are adapting to them. The public want us to be open, more transparent. That is exactly what we're doing.
Let me exhort you to dedicate yourself to such pursuits as may at once enable you to be respectable in life, useful to mankind, and an ornament to the society of which this day you have become a member. I am led to hope that you will duly come to appreciate the value of Freemasonry and indelibly imprint upon your heart the sacred dictates of truth, of honour, and of virtue.